ocean tonight. Waves coming in at their own pace. Not rushing, not waiting for the conditions to be right. Just arriving the way they always do. Underneath it, music, quiet, already here. Let it all settle before I say anything. Let me ask you something. Is there something you have been meaning to start or finish that keeps getting pushed back? Not because you don't have time, not because you don't care about it, but because every time you sit down to do it, something feels off. It does not feel ready. You do not feel ready. The conditions are not quite right yet. Maybe you need to know more first. Maybe you need a better plan. Maybe you just need one more day to get your head straight before you begin. And so you don't start, or you start and stop, or you circle around it without quite touching it. Because if you are going to do it, you want to do it properly, and you cannot do it properly right now. That is the perfectionism loop. Not laziness, not a lack of motivation. A specific pattern where the need to do something well stops you from doing it at all. Where the standard you are holding yourself to is so high that starting feels too risky. Because starting means you might find out that what you produce does not meet it. The ocean does not wait until the conditions are perfect before the next wave comes in. It just comes in. Tonight you are going to understand exactly why the perfectionism loop runs the way it does, and why you are allowed to start before you are ready. Here is where the perfectionism loop actually comes from. Perfectionism is not about standards. Everyone has standards. Perfectionism is specifically about what happens when you connect the quality of what you produce to your worth as a person. When a piece of work is just a piece of work, finishing it imperfectly is fine. You did what you could, you move on. But when a piece of work feels like evidence of who you are, when getting it wrong feels like it says something about your ability, your intelligence, your value, then finishing it imperfectly becomes a much bigger risk. The brain's threat detection system, the amygdala, treats that risk like a real threat. Not a physical danger, but a social one. The possibility of being seen as not good enough. The possibility of producing something that proves the thing you are most afraid of, that you are not as capable as you need to be. And when the amygdala detects a threat, your body's stress response activates. Cortisol goes up. Your brain narrows its focus to the threat. Creative thinking becomes harder. Problem solving becomes harder. The thing you sat down to do becomes harder to access. So you avoid it. Not consciously. Your brain is just steering you away from the thing that feels dangerous. You find other things to do. You tell yourself you will do it when you feel more ready, and the loop continues. There is usually one specific thing that has been sitting unstarted or half-started for longer than it should have. One project, one task, one thing you care about enough that starting it imperfectly feels too risky. Yours will know exactly what it is. The ocean does not evaluate the waves before they come in. It does not check whether this one is good enough. It just sends them. Here is the specific thinking pattern that keeps the perfectionism loop running. It is called all or nothing thinking. This is where your brain sets up two possible outcomes: perfect or failure. There is no middle ground. Either the thing is done right, or it is not worth doing. Either you can do it well, or you should not do it at all. This thinking pattern feels like high standards. It does not feel like a problem. It feels like you are just being realistic about what good work looks like. But it is not realistic. It is a binary that does not exist in reality. Almost everything worthwhile is done imperfectly. Most things that exist in the world, books, businesses, relationships, careers, were started before they were ready and improved along the way. The perfectionism loop is waiting for a version of readiness that does not come, because the only way to get ready for most things is to start doing them. The anterior cingulate cortex, the part of your brain that monitors for errors and conflicts, is very active when the perfectionism loop is running. It is constantly comparing what you are producing against the standard you have set. Every time there is a gap, it flags it. This is useful when you are editing finished work. It is not useful when it runs before you have started, because it is comparing nothing against a standard and finding it wanting. The ocean keeps coming in. It does not run an error check before each wave. It does not wait for a wave that meets a certain standard before sending it. Here is what the science says about perfectionism and why it makes things harder, not better. Research consistently shows that perfectionism does not produce better outcomes. People who set perfectionist standards for themselves do not produce better work than people who aim for good enough. What they do produce is more anxiety, more procrastination, more avoidance, and more distress when they fall short. This is because the threat response that perfectionism activates, the cortisol, the amygdala firing, the body staying in a low-level stress state, actively interferes with the cognitive processes you need to do good work: creativity, flexible thinking, the ability to try something and adjust it. These all go down when your threat response is running. The perfectionism loop is, in a real biological sense, making the work harder to do well. The psychologist Carol Dweck's research on mindset found something important here. People who believe their abilities are fixed, who think that talent is something you either have or you don't, are much more likely to avoid challenges where they might fail. Because if you fail, it means you do not have the ability. Whereas people who believe abilities develop through effort are more willing to try things imperfectly, because a mistake does not say anything permanent about them. The perfectionism loop runs on a fixed mindset. It is treating the quality of what you produce as evidence of who you are, not as the result of a process that can be improved. Every imperfect thing you make is being read as a statement about your worth, not as a normal step in getting better at something. That is not a true reading, but the amygdala does not know that. It just knows that a threat has been detected, and it is going to keep flagging it until the threat is resolved. The only way to break the perfectionism loop is to start before the conditions feel right, not because the conditions will never be right. Sometimes they will be better than they are now, but because waiting for the right conditions is part of the loop itself. The brain will always find a reason why now is not quite the right time. The plan is not quite solid enough. You do not know enough yet. You need one more thing before you can begin. The conditions will not feel right until you have started. That is just how it works. The readiness comes from doing, not from waiting. The ocean does not need the conditions to be right. It does not check whether this is a good time for another wave. It just keeps coming in. The music underneath has been here the whole time too. Not waiting to be ready, just present. You are allowed to start before it is perfect. Not because the standard does not matter. Not because quality is not worth aiming for. But because the perfectionism loop is not protecting the quality of your work. It is preventing the work from existing at all. A thing done imperfectly exists. It can be looked at, improved, finished, or abandoned. An imperfect thing in the world is better than a perfect thing that only exists in your head as a standard that nothing real can meet. The standard you are holding yourself to is not the problem. The timing is the problem. The standard belongs at the end, when you are editing, refining, deciding whether something is good enough to share. It does not belong at the beginning. At the beginning, the only standard that matters is starting. You have probably been inside this loop for longer than this particular thing. The perfectionism loop does not usually start with one project. It is a pattern that runs across many things over many years, which means getting out of it is not about this one thing either. It is about practicing starting on small things, on things that do not matter much, on things where imperfect is obviously fine, until the threat response that comes with starting gets starting. Tonight, just tonight, you do not have to solve the whole loop. You are just allowed to sit here and let the ocean keep coming in, wave after wave, without checking whether each one is good enough. And let your nervous system rest from the effort of holding everything to a standard it cannot yet meet. Let your attention come to your body for a moment, into your chest. The perfectionism loop tends to create a specific kind of tension there. The weight of something unstarted that you care about. Something that has been sitting, waiting for the right moment. You do not have to solve it tonight. Just let it be there without adding more pressure on top of it. Into your shoulders. The physical tension of a brain running a constant error check, comparing what exists against what should exist, and finding the gap. Let them drop. The error check can pause for tonight. The ocean is still coming in. Steady, unhurried, not checking whether this wave meets the standard before it arrives, just coming in the way it always does, into your jaw, your hands. Let them stop holding on. In a moment, my voice will fade, the ocean will stay, and the thing that has been waiting to be started, it will still be there in the morning. And in the morning, you are allowed to begin it imperfectly. What has yours been waiting to be perfect?